My sister's family broke into the house my grandfather left me, moved their furniture in, and told their kids it was their new home. So I called the police and realized it was only the first step of a bigger plan. 2 years ago, my grandfather passed away. We were incredibly close. I spent every summer with him at his beach house growing up, and even as an adult, I'd visit him regularly. He taught me to surf, showed me the best hidden spots along the coast, and we'd spend hours talking about life while watching the sunset from his deck. When his will was read, I was shocked to learn he'd left me the beach house. Along with the deed came a handwritten letter that I still keep in my nightstand. In it, he wrote about how he'd watched me find peace in that house, how the ocean seemed to heal something in me, and how he wanted me to always have that sanctuary. He specifically mentioned that he knew I needed a place to escape from the pressures of modern life. My sister Michelle, 33, female, received an equal inheritance in cash, roughly the same value as a beach house. My father, Bruce, 57, inherited his father's main residence, a beautiful colonial in the suburbs, worth considerably more than either of our inheritances. Everyone seemed satisfied at the time. The beach house isn't some mansion. It's a modest 3-bedroom cottage built in the 1960s, about 2 hours from where I live. It needs constant maintenance, which I've lovingly provided. I've kept Grandpa's wind chimes on the porch, his collection of sea lass in the windows, and even his ancient coffee maker that only works if you hit it just right. I work in tech with a demanding schedule that often runs 60 to 70 hours a week, so I mainly use it on weekends and for the occasional longer stay when I can work remotely. It's become essential to my mental health, my place to decompress, surf, read, and just exist without the constant ping of notifications and demands. 6 months ago, things started to shift. It began with small comments from my mother during family gatherings. "Such a shame that beautiful house sits empty during the week," she'd say. Or, "3 bedrooms for one person seems excessive." I'd laugh it off, explaining that I was there as often as I could be, and that maintaining it was a labor of love. My sister started joining in these comments about 4 months ago. She'd mention how her kids, Christina, 5 female, and Ethan, 3 male, were getting cramped in their current home. How the schools near the beach were supposedly excellent, how unfair it was that I got the prize of the inheritance while she just got money, conveniently forgetting that she used that money for a boat and a kitchen renovation. Last Sunday, during our monthly family dinner at my parents' house, they tag-teamed me in what felt like a planned attack. We barely finished the main course when my mother cleared her throat and launched into this prepared speech about family resources being used efficiently and how Grandpa, while meaning well, couldn't have foreseen how the family's needs would evolve. She actually used corporate buzzwords like maximizing utility and resource allocation. Michelle jumped in immediately, painting this picture of her kids growing up by the beach, learning to surf like we did, building sandcastles every morning. Her husband, Jason, 32, male, chimed in with research he'd apparently done on the local schools, showing me rankings on his phone and talking about how the sea air would be so good for Christina's asthma, a condition I'd never heard her mention before. The culmination was my mother suggesting that I should either gift the house to Michelle or sell it to her for a family discount of about 40% below market value. When I asked why Michelle couldn't just buy a beach house with her inheritance money, Jason actually laughed and said she'd already spent it on responsible family investments. I pointed out that a boat he uses twice a year and a kitchen renovation aren't exactly necessities, especially when they could have sold a boat to fund a beach house, if that's what they really wanted. I reminded them that Grandpa left specific instructions in his will, that he wanted me to have that house. I even offered to read them his letter, though that felt too personal to share. My mother's response chilled me. Dad was getting sentimental at the end. He wasn't thinking clearly about what's best for the family's future. When I firmly said no, Michelle accused me of being selfish, saying I just use it as a bachelorette pad for weekend parties, which is laughable to anyone who knows me. My idea of a wild weekend is reading 3 books and falling asleep on the deck at 9 p.m. My mother shook her head and said she was disappointed in my lack of family values and my inability to see the bigger picture. My father, Bruce, 57, male, who had been silent during dinner, later pulled me aside in the kitchen. He said he understood why I wanted to keep the house, but asked if I'd consider some kind of timeshare arrangement. Maybe they could have it during the summer months, when the kids are off school, he suggested. When I pointed out that summer's when I use it most, he sighed and said I was putting him in an impossible position. Even my boyfriend Luke, 29, male, who's usually completely supportive, asked on the drive home if maybe I was being too rigid. He knows how much the house means to me. He's seen me there, seen how my entire demeanor changes when we cross the bridge onto the island. But he also wondered if there was some compromise that could keep the family peace. I felt betrayed that even he was suggesting I should consider giving up my sanctuary. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the mornings I'd watch the sunrise from Grandpa's deck, coffee in hand, planning my day of surfing. The nights I'd spent there after brutal work weeks, slowly feeling human again. The weekend I spent there after my last relationship ended, walking the beach for hours and finally feeling like myself again. How can I explain to them that it's not just a house? It's where I go to remember who I am. Am I really the one for wanting to keep my inherited property that was specifically left to me? The house means everything to me. It's not just about the property value or having a weekend getaway. It's about having a place where I can breathe, where I can exist without pretense or pressure. It's about honoring my grandfather's wishes and the bond we shared. But my entire family is making me feel like I'm some kind of selfish monster for not handing over my inheritance to my sister just because she chose to have kids. Update 1, posted 3 weeks later. Update. They're escalating, and I'm at my breaking point. I want to thank everyone who responded to my original post. The overwhelming consensus that I'm not gave me the confidence to stand firm, though I've been second-guessing myself constantly. Your comments about family entitlement and honoring my grandfather's wishes really resonated. Unfortunately, things have escalated beyond what I could have imagined. 2 weeks ago, I left work early on Friday, around 2 p.m. instead of my usual 7 p.m., because I'd had a particularly brutal week and just needed to get to the beach house. The entire drive, I felt my shoulders slowly relaxing, looking forward to my weekend routine. Arrive, open all the windows to let the sea air in, make a simple dinner, and fall asleep to the sound of waves. As I turned onto the coastal road, I noticed the increased traffic, but didn't think much of it. Tourist season was starting. But when I pulled up to my house, my stomach dropped. My mother's BMW was in the driveway, along with Michelle's SUV and Jason's sedan. My spot, where I always park in the shade of the old oak tree Grandpa planted, was blocked. I sat in my car for a moment, trying to process what I was seeing. Through the windows, I could see movement inside my house. The front door was wide open, Grandpa's wind chime singing in the breeze as if nothing was wrong. When I walked in, the scene was surreal. My mother was at the dining table with papers spread out in front of her. Michelle and Jason were in the kitchen, Jason cooking with my pans, while Michelle opened a beer from my fridge. The kids were in the living room, toys scattered everywhere, watching cartoons on my TV. They'd even moved some of the furniture around. My mother looked up casually and said, "Jamie, good, you're here. We're having a family meeting about the beach house situation. I thought neutral ground would be best for a productive discussion." "Neutral ground?" I sputtered. "This is my house." Jason turned from the stove with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We're making tacos. There's plenty if you're hungry. I hope you don't mind, but your spice rack was a bit lacking, so I brought some from home." The audacity left me speechless. My niece Christina ran up to me holding one of Grandpa's old painted seashells I keep on the mantle. "Aunt Jamie, Mommy says this is going to be my room." She pointed to the guest room, the one with the ocean view that I use as my office, where I'd spent countless hours working remotely, finding inspiration in the horizon. I tried to stay calm. "Everyone needs to leave. This is trespassing." Michelle laughed. Actually laughed. "Trespassing? We're family. Mom has a key. Family doesn't trespass. They visit." "I changed the locks 4 weeks ago," I said slowly. "How did you get in?" My mother had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. "Well, we still had the old key, and when we tried it, it didn't work. but the property management company in town remembered when Dad used them years ago. I explained this was a family emergency, that we were worried about you, and they helped us check on things. I was shaking with rage. Not only had they manipulated a local business that my grandfather had trusted for decades, but they'd essentially committed fraud to gain entry. You lied to them to break into my house. We didn't break anything, my mother said defensively. They let us in with their master key, and we explained the situation. I noticed Jason's notebook. It was open to sketches of kid-friendly renovations, including removing Grandpa's built-in bookshelves to make room for toy storage. You have 1 hour to leave, I said, my voice deadly calm, or I'm calling the police. That's when my mother stood up. Her full height meant to be intimidating. You would call the police on your own family. Your grandfather would be ashamed. He valued family above everything. He valued respect and boundaries, I shot back, which is why he left me this house, because he knew I'd take care of it, not treat it like I'm entitled to it. The situation deteriorated quickly. Jason started crying, saying I was traumatizing the children by threatening their parents. Michelle accused me of being exactly what's wrong with millennials: selfish, materialistic, and putting property over people. My mother pulled out her phone and called my father, putting him on speaker so he could talk sense into me. The final straw was when I went to use the bathroom and found Michelle in my bedroom, my private space, with a measuring tape, checking if their California king bed would fit. She'd even moved some of my things around to visualize the new layout. On my dresser, next to the photo of Grandpa and me from my college graduation, she placed a sticky note that said, "Move to garage." I lost it. I mean, completely lost it. I yelled at her to get out, that she had no right to even think about my private space. She tried to gaslight me, saying I was overreacting and that she was just planning for the inevitable. I called the police then and there. While we waited, my mother tried every manipulation tactic in the book. She talked about family legacy, about how Grandpa's house should be filled with children's laughter, about how I was choosing to be alone and bitter. Jason packed up his taco supplies with theatrical sighs, telling the kids that Aunt Jaime didn't want them there. Christina started crying, asking why I was being mean. When the officers arrived, I showed them my deed, explained the situation, and showed them text messages from 3 weeks ago explicitly stating that no one was welcome at the property without my express permission. My mother tried to argue it was a civil matter, a family dispute that didn't require police intervention. The officers disagreed and told everyone to leave immediately. As they gathered their things, Michelle hissed at me that I'm everything wrong with my generation and that I'll die alone in that house. Jason loudly told the children that some people value things more than family. My mother said nothing, but the look she gave me was meant to convey complete disappointment and disgust. After they left, I called the property management company immediately. The manager was mortified when I explained what had happened. Apparently, my mother had spun a story about me being unreachable and having a mental health crisis, claiming they needed to do a wellness check. The company has since updated their policies and assured me this won't happen again. I'm also pursuing legal action against them for unauthorized entry. They'd moved my coffee maker to make room for a kid's snack station. There were juice boxes in my fridge. They'd even started a grocery list on my whiteboard, crossing off items I had listed and adding their own. The violation felt so much deeper than just trespassing. They tried to erase me from my own space. After they left, I found they'd already made small changes. I spent that night installing new locks, smart locks, this time with unique codes I can control remotely. I also had a security company install a comprehensive camera system around the property. The next day, covering all approaches, including the beachside access, I learned my lesson about having blind spots. I've since hired a lawyer to send a formal cease and desist letter to all of them, making it clear that any further attempts to enter the property will result in criminal charges. My father calls daily, crying about how the family is torn apart. Extended relatives I haven't spoken to in years are reaching out to tell me I'm being unreasonable. My cousin posted on Facebook about how some people forget where they come from and think they're too good for family. I've had to block most of them.
Luke has been supportive but frustrated with the drama. He doesn't understand why they can't just respect my boundaries. He suggested selling the house just to end the conflict, but I refuse. Why should I give up my inheritance, my sanctuary, because they feel entitled to it? I'm heading back this weekend, and honestly, I'm anxious. Part of me expects to find windows broken, or worse. The peace I once found there feels tainted now. But I'm determined to reclaim it. This is my house, my inheritance, my connection to my grandfather. I won't let them take that from me. Update 2, posted 5 weeks after the first update. Final update, the nuclear option.
I'm sitting in a hotel room in a state of shock, alternating between rage and disbelief. I need to document this while it's fresh, partly for legal reasons, and partly because I need to process what just happened.
Yesterday, Friday, I decided to leave work at noon.
I've been anxious all week about returning to the beach house, but I figured arriving in broad daylight would be safer. The drive felt different this time. Instead of my usual relaxation, I spent 2 hours with my shoulders tense, checking my security camera app every time I hit a red light. Everything looked normal on the cameras, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As I turned onto my street, I immediately knew my instincts were right. There were cars everywhere. Michelle's SUV, a large moving truck, my mother's BMW, and several cars I didn't recognize.
My comprehensive security system should have alerted me to any movement, but I realized they must have disabled it somehow.
Later, I discovered they cut the power to the main security panel, thinking that would disable everything. They didn't know I'd installed a backup battery system and cellular backup that had been recording everything. I pulled over a few houses down and called my lawyer. He advised me to document everything and call the police immediately if they were inside. With shaking hands, I started recording video on my phone and walked toward my house. The front door was wide open, not just unlocked, wide open, with boxes stacked on the porch. I could hear voices inside, multiple people talking and laughing. Through the window, I could see strangers, movers carrying furniture. My furniture out, other furniture in. I walked through my own front door to find my worst nightmare realized. The living room was in chaos. My couch was gone, replaced with Michelle and Jason's sectional. My grandfather's antique coffee table was pushed against the wall, a child-proof monstrosity in its place. The walls I'd spent a weekend last year carefully touching up the paint were already marked with crayon. Jason was in the kitchen, unpacking. Not visiting, not having a meeting, unpacking. He was placing their dishes in my cabinets, humming to himself like this was perfectly normal. My grandfather's china, which I use every Sunday morning for breakfast, just like he did, was boxed up on the counter labeled garage. My sister's kids were running around with their toys everywhere. Ethan had taken over the Sun Nuke where I keep my surfboards, his toy trucks exactly where my board rack used to be. Christina was jumping on bubble wrap in the hallway, shouting about her new house. But the worst part, the absolute worst part, was my mother. She was standing in the middle of it all like a general surveying her troops, directing movers with my belongings. "That can go to the garage," she said about my bookshelf. "We won't be needing that." About my bar cart, I stood there for a full 30 seconds before Jason noticed me. And when he did, he smiled. He actually smiled and said, "Oh, Jamie, we weren't expecting you until tonight. Don't worry, we saved your bedroom for you. We thought you'd want to keep visiting on weekends." Keep visiting weekends in my own house. "Get out," I said, surprised at how calm my voice sounded. "Get out right now." That's when Michelle appeared from the back deck, where she'd been assembling what looked like a massive playset. "Jamie, honey, let's talk about this rationally. We're already here. The kids are enrolled in school starting Monday. Fighting this is just going to hurt everyone." My mother approached me then, putting her hand on my shoulder in that condescending way she has. "Sweetheart, it's time to face reality. You're a single woman with a demanding job who barely uses this place. Michelle has a family that needs it. Your grandfather would understand. Family needs change." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. That's when everything exploded. My mother tried to grab my phone, Actually, physically tried to take it from me.
Don't be...
I stepped back, keeping the phone to my ear. My family is stealing my house. Send police immediately. Michelle came charging in from the deck. Stealing? We're your family. Mom and Dad gave me life too. Why do you get everything?
I don't get everything, I shouted back, finally losing my composure.
You got the same inheritance I did. You spent yours on a boat and a kitchen renovation. That's not my fault.
Jason started crying. Loud, theatrical sobs.
How can you do this to children? They think this is their home now. We told them they'd grow up by the beach.
Then you lied to them, I said.
Just like you're lying now, pretending you have any right to be here. My mother, red-faced with rage, dropped the bomb. I've already spoken to lawyers. We had legitimate access before. That establishes a pattern of family use. We're establishing residency. You'll have to formally evict us, and that takes months. By then, you'll come to your senses and realize this is what's best for everyone. You broke into my house, I said. I have it all on camera. The security system you thought you disabled has cellular backup. It proved we had previous legitimate access, she countered. But I could see doubt creeping into her eyes. The property management company confirmed we'd been here before as family.
That's when I realized this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. They planned this. They'd consulted lawyers, manipulated local businesses, enrolled the kids in school, hired movers. This was a coordinated attack on my property and my life. The 911 operator had heard everything and assured me officers were on the way. The next 15 minutes were the longest of my life. Jason alternated between sobbing and trying to guilt me, showing me the kids' drawings of their beach house. Michelle paced like a caged animal, occasionally throwing out insults about my selfishness, my inability to maintain relationships, how I die alone, surrounded by money instead of family. My mother was the worst. She turned cold, calculating. She started talking about Grandpa's real wishes, how he told her privately that he hoped I'd grow up and share with my sister. When I called her a liar, she said I was too blinded by greed to see the truth. The movers, to their credit, had stopped working and were clearly uncomfortable. One of them approached me quietly and said they'd been told this was a family property transfer, that all parties were in agreement. He showed me the work order. Michelle had forged my signature. When the police arrived, 3 cars, lights flashing, the narrative my family tried to spin was incredible. My mother claimed I'd agreed to let Michelle try out living there for the summer. Jason wailed about their children being made homeless. Michelle accused me of having rich girl syndrome and said I was probably on drugs to be acting so irrationally. I showed the officers my documentation, the deed, the cease and desist letter my lawyer had sent, text messages explicitly denying them access, and the security footage of them arriving with the moving truck. The forged signature on the moving company's paperwork sealed it. The lead officer told everyone they needed to leave immediately or face arrest for breaking and entering, criminal trespassing, and fraud. That's when my 3-year-old nephew, sweet Ethan, who I've always adored, ran up to me with tears streaming down his face. "Aunt Jamie, why are you stealing our house? Mommy said you don't need it, and we do. Don't you love us?" My heart broke. This innocent child had been weaponized against me. They'd filled his head with lies, and now he thought I was the villain. I knelt down and said, "I love you very much, buddy, but this isn't your house. Your mommy made a mistake." Michelle yanked her son away from me. "Don't talk to him, Ethan. Aunt Jamie cares more about houses than family." As the police supervised their exit, the scene was chaos. Jason had to repack boxes while sobbing about school enrollment fees they'd lose. Michelle loaded her kids into the car loudly, telling them that some people are just selfish, and that's why they end up alone. My mother said nothing to me directly, but told the officers this was family business, and I'd regret getting law enforcement involved. The movers had to reload everything and take it back. It took 3 hours to get everyone out and my belongings back in place. Well, in place is generous. My house looked like a tornado had hit it. My furniture was scattered, my kitchen was in chaos. My personal items were stuffed in random boxes. After everyone left, I called the locksmith for an emergency visit. While waiting, I discovered the full extent of what they'd done. They'd forwarded mail to my address in Michelle's name. There were children's life preservers hanging in my shed.
They'd installed child safety gates at the top and bottom of the stairs. In my office, my desk had been dismantled and pushed against the wall to make room for bunk beds that were halfway assembled. The locksmith installed new high-security locks that can't be picked or duplicated without my authorization. That night, I couldn't stay in the house. It felt violated, like a crime scene. I drove to a hotel an hour away and finally broke down. Not just tears, full-body sobs. The house my grandfather left me, my sanctuary, had been turned into a battlefield. I've spent a day with my lawyer. We're filing charges for breaking and entering, fraud, the forged signature, and seeking a restraining order against all of them. The lawyer says their residency plan was legally nonsense and likely came from some sovereign citizen website rather than actual legal advice. We're also suing for damages. They did about $3,000 worth of damage to the walls and floors during their move-in. My phone hasn't stopped ringing. My father left 17 voicemails, each more hysterical than the last. Extended family members are calling me a monster. Someone, I suspect Jason, posted on social media about how I called the police on children and made a family homeless out of greed. I've received death threats from people I went to high school with. But here's the thing. I'm done. I'm done feeling guilty. I'm done being manipulated. I'm done with their entitlement. They could have asked to visit. They could have requested to rent it for a week. Hell, if they'd approached me with respect and understanding, I might have even offered to let them use it occasionally. But instead, they tried to steal my house, traumatized children with their lies, and destroyed my family in the process. I've blocked them all on everything. I'm proceeding with all legal charges. The restraining order should be in place by next week. My therapist, who I called for an emergency session, says what they did was criminal and abusive, and that I should feel no guilt for protecting myself and my property. Luke has been my rock through this. He's fielded calls, helped me sort through the legal paperwork, and reminded me that I'm not crazy. We're planning to go to the beach house together next weekend to properly clean and reclaim it. He suggested a cleansing ceremony, burning sage, and making new memories to override the violation. I know I'll likely never have a relationship with my mother or sister again. That ship hasn't just sailed. They set it on fire and sank it. My father might be salvageable someday, but not while he's enabling them. The extended family can think what they want. They've shown their true colors. My grandfather left me the house because he knew I cherish it, respect it, and find peace there. I failed to protect it once, but never again. It's mine legally and morally, and I'll be damned if I let anyone make me feel guilty for that. To anyone dealing with entitled family, document everything. Change your locks, install cameras, get a lawyer, and don't for 1 second feel guilty about protecting what's yours. Family isn't about blood. It's about respect, love, and boundaries. Anyone who tries to violate those isn't family worth having. Edit. Additional thoughts and reflections. 2 weeks later, I've been getting a lot of messages asking for more details about the aftermath of my emotional journey. So, I wanted to add some additional thoughts while everything is still fresh. The hardest part of this whole ordeal isn't the legal battles, or even the family destruction. It's the gaslighting. Even now, weeks later, I sometimes catch myself wondering if I overreacted. That's how insidious their manipulation was. They had me questioning my own reality, my own rights to my property, my own grandfather's explicit wishes. My therapist calls this manufactured guilt, and apparently it's common in family abuse situations. I've been doing a lot of reading about narcissistic family systems, and it's been eye-opening. The golden child, Michelle, versus the scapegoat, me. The flying monkeys, extended family. The enabler, my father. Initially, I see now that this pattern has been going on my entire life. I was just too close to recognize it. Every family gathering where I felt uncomfortable. Every time my achievements were minimized while Michelle's were celebrated. Every boundary I tried to set that was steamrolled. This beach house incident wasn't an anomaly. It was the culmination of decades of entitlement and boundary violations. What's been particularly painful is losing the extended family. My Aunt Sarah, who I thought I was close to, sent me a scathing email about how I'm destroying the family over a piece of real estate. My cousin Marcus, who used to text me regularly, has gone completely silent. It's like they can't see past the surface narrative of mean single woman won't share with family with children to understand the deeper violation that occurred. But I've also discovered who my real support system is. My college roommate flew out from across the country just to sit with me and help me reorganize the house. My work friends have been incredible, covering for me during court dates and sending care packages. Luke's family, who I was nervous to tell about all this drama, have been nothing but supportive. His mother actually said, "Good for you for standing up to bullies, even if they're family."
The legal process has been both validating and exhausting. My lawyer says the criminal case is strong. The forgery alone could result in felony charges for Michelle. But she also warned me that family court cases can drag on for years and get very ugly. Michelle's lawyer has already tried to paint me as mentally unstable and vindictive. They're actually arguing that my obsession with the house proves I'm unfit to own property. The irony is breathtaking. I've started seeing patterns in how they operate. Michelle reached out to Luke directly last week, trying to get him to talk sense into me. When that didn't work, she contacted my boss at work, claiming I was having a mental breakdown and needed intervention. Fortunately, my boss knows me well enough to see through the manipulation, but it shows how far they're willing to go. The kids' situation weighs on me daily. I know Christina and Ethan don't understand what's happening. To them, their mom probably just said, "Aunt Jamie doesn't want us to live by the beach anymore." I've been debating whether to write them letters, explaining my side to be opened when they're older, but my lawyer advised against any contact right now, given the restraining order. Sleep has been difficult. I keep having dreams where I come home to find the house occupied again, or where my grandfather is disappointed in me for breaking up the family. My therapist says trauma responses are normal, but knowing that doesn't make 3 a.m. anxiety attacks any easier. On the positive side, I'm rediscovering what the house means to me without the constant threat of invasion. Last weekend, Luke and I spent Saturday mornings surfing, and for the first time in months, I felt that pure joy again. We're talking about getting a dog, something I never considered before because I was always worried about leaving it alone during my busy work weeks. Now, I realize I can work remotely more often, and having a furry companion at the beach house sounds perfect. I'm also planning some updates to the property, not because I have to, but because I want to. A new deck with better ocean views, maybe a small addition for a proper home office. Things that will make it even more mine, even more of a sanctuary. Every improvement feels like an act of reclamation. Final edit. 1 month later, the legal update you've all been asking for. The restraining order was granted against all 3 of them, my mother, Michelle, and Jason. They're not allowed within 500 feet of the property, or me personally. Michelle tried to contest it, claiming it was excessive and would prevent family gatherings. The judge, after reviewing the security footage and forged moving documents, called their actions a premeditated attempt at theft through deception and upheld the order. Criminal charges are moving forward. The DA is taking this seriously, especially the forgery. Michelle is facing potential jail time, though her lawyer is pushing for a plea deal. My mother is being charged as an accomplice. Jason is somehow trying to claim he was just following his wife's lead, but the prosecutor has him on video directing movers with my belongings, so that's not flying. The civil lawsuit is ongoing. My lawyer is confident we'll recover damages plus legal fees. The moving company is cooperating fully. They're mortified they were used in this scheme and have provided all documentation showing Michelle presented herself as the homeowner. Family fallout continues. My father filed for separation from my mother last week. He's staying with his brother and reached out through my uncle to apologize. He admitted he knew they were planning something, but didn't think they'd go so far. I told him I need time, but I'm open to rebuilding our relationship eventually, just the 2 of us.
without my mother's influence.
The extended family drama has mostly died down since the criminal charges were filed.
Funny how family should share becomes, well, they shouldn't have broken the law, when actual consequences appear.
Jason's parents apparently read him the riot act after learning he involved their grandchildren in a criminal scheme.
The house is slowly feeling like mine again. Luke and I have spent every weekend there, making new memories. I fixed the wall damage, reorganized everything exactly how I want it, and even added some new security features. The sage cleansing actually helped. Probably just psychological, but the house feels cleaner somehow.
My therapist has been incredible.
We're working through not just this incident, but years of family manipulation I hadn't fully recognized. Turns out, this wasn't the first time they tried to take what was mine. Just the most dramatic. Last weekend, I found one of Ethan's toy cars under the deck. Instead of anger, I just felt sad. Those kids are victims too, fed lies and used as weapons. I've set aside money and a trust for them, not accessible by their parents, for when they're adults. Maybe then we can have a relationship built on truth. I've also started a journal, writing letters to my grandfather about everything that's happened. I tell him about the sunrise surf sessions, the books I read on his deck, the way his wind chimes still sing in the evening breeze. I thank him for knowing I'd need this place, and for trusting me with it. To everyone who shared their own stories of family entitlement and boundary violations, thank you. Your experiences help me feel less alone and more justified in my response.
To those who said I should have just given them the house to keep the peace,
I hope you never have to learn firsthand why that's terrible advice. Enabling entitlement doesn't create peace. It creates monsters who will demand more. The house is mine. The peace is returning. The family I lost wasn't worth keeping. And somewhere, I think my grandfather is proud that I stood my ground. Thank you all for following this journey. I'm closing this chapter now and looking forward to many peaceful weekends by the sea, exactly as my grandfather intended.